As is always the case surrounding England, and a number of other national teams in truth, it's not just us, there is a real frenzy surrounding squad announcements. Who's in, who's out? Is it the 26-man squad, the 42-man squad, or the 38-player one with no goalkeepers, just to keep the opposition on their toes? It can all get a little bit silly at times, though I'd be lying if I said that I didn't get caught up in it. Over the last week, my mates have all been sending photographs of their preferred England starting 11s that they've jotted down with pens and papers to the group chat. There's double pivots, false nines, I think. I even saw Connor Cody deployed as an overlapping centre-back in one of them. It's all part of the fun in the build-up to a major international tournament, and we all put our manager's hat on and throw our 2 pennies worth into the hat for what it is worth. There is a particular frenzy for England ahead of Euro 2020 since Wembley Stadium will host more games at Euro 2020 than any other country or ground, including both semi-finals and the final. Indeed, if England managed to top their group, their route to the final wouldn't require them to leave this green and pleasant land for a single fixture. Ultimately though, when it comes to who travels, albeit not far, who plays, where they play, and how they play, there is only one man's views that really matter. Well, I suppose there's his coaching team and backroom staff, but you know what I mean. It is Gareth Southgate who is calling the shots, and he has earned that right, having guided England to the semi-finals of the 2018 World Cup, which was their best performance at a major tournament since Euro 96, which was the last time that England hosted games at either the Euros or the World Cup. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what to expect from England at this summer's Euros, in terms of both style and personnel, how I think England will perform, and why, ultimately, many people will be disappointed. So strap in, relax, and join me on a bit of a mega thread about what to expect from England this summer as they go in search of their first ever European Championship crown. When I say that I think ultimately a lot of people will be disappointed by England, I do not mean in terms of how far England will progress. I will come to that question later on. But first and foremost, I think despite knowing how Gareth Southgate has tended to set England up in the past, a lot of people think he is going to be more positive and more expansive going into this summer's Euros. I think England likely will be a bit more creative outside of just set pieces than they were in Russia in 2018, but I think that is because England have improved, particularly in midfield, rather than any drastic tactical changes. Gareth Southgate's first thought is almost always to be conservative, to keep things tight, try not to concede, and rely on an excellent front three to punish England's opponents from the limited chances that they get. In many respects, Southgate's style reminds me of Chelsea during the 2014-15 season under Jose Mourinho, who were pretty defensive in spite of having a gifted squad of players. Mourinho's men played a percentages game, whereby they kept a lot of clean sheets and banked on a front three of Eden Hazard, Willian and Diego Costa coming up with enough moments of magic to win them the league. And it worked. That season. It was a little less successful the following season when Mourinho was dismissed during one of the worst title defences in the history of the Premier League, and that is the danger of playing that way. As soon as any defensive cracks start to appear, the goals dry up, or results drop off, people begin to ask what you're really left with. There is no great style of play, no real signs of progress, and no suggestion that you're building towards something bigger or better in the future. Equally though, and by the same token, if you do win games, very few people will complain about the method of victory that has been deployed. At the 2018 World Cup, England played a sort of 3-5-2, sort of 3-3-3-1 formation, with 3 centre-backs, Jordan Henderson sitting in midfield, Kieran Trippier and Ashley Young playing as wing-backs, and Dele Alli, Jesse Lingard and Raheem Sterling operating in behind Harry Kane up front. It was a functional formation, which allowed England to sit in tight when they were under pressure, shutting down any pockets of space and getting men behind the ball, whilst countering at pace with plenty of athleticism in the team. The biggest problem for England was the lack of genuine creativity, and the failure to really get hold of the ball against quality opposition. Kieran Trippier was England's primary creative force in open play from the wing-back position. Meanwhile, the majority of England's goals and chances actually came from set pieces, again, often provided by Kieran Trippier or Harry Kane dispatching from the penalty spot. England's novel NBA-inspired movement on corners and free kicks was outstanding, and ought not be dismissed as a somehow less worthy way in which to score a goal than a fantastic move with 58 passes in the build-up. With that being said, when those two threats were neutralised, England seemed to have little in the way of a plan B. When you looked to the bench for some creativity in midfield, all you would find was Fabian Delph and Eric Dyer. That won't be the case this time around, and that is a key difference between England in 2018 and England in 2021. But do not be surprised if a plan A remains the same. Gareth Southgate may have moved away from playing a back 3 or back 5 in World Cup qualifiers, putting his faith in a slightly more adventurous 4-3-3 formation, but I still think it is the formation that he is most comfortable playing, and that it is the one he will revert to when playing against any elite level opposition at the Euros this summer. Apologies, elite seems like a bit of an ambiguous term in this instance, but basically I think he will be very tempted and will most likely cave into the temptation of playing a back 3/back 5 against anyone who ranks above Sweden in the FIFA World Rankings. He reverted straight back to when England played Belgium twice in the Nations League towards the back end of 2020, which is basically the only time England have faced opposition of that calibre in a competitive fixture since the Nations League finals in the summer of 2019. Interestingly, in that instance, Belgium actually play a very similar formation, just with slightly more creative midfielders, meaning that England basically matched up to Roberto Martinez's side, winning one of those games and losing the other. And yes, that means that not only do I think Southgate will likely revert to a back 3 at some stage, he will most likely do that whilst continuing to start 2 holding midfielders. Anyone who is dreaming of interplay between Phil Foden, Jack Grealish and Jadon Sancho with little flicks and tricks and clever intricate movement, at least beyond the group stages, should England progress, is likely to be disappointed. And even during the group stages, I doubt you'll see even 2 of those 3 players start during the same game, none of whom are in Gareth Southgate's preferred 11, at least not from all the available evidence. In fact, Phil Foden is someone who I would like to focus on specifically. It won't come as any surprise to subscribers to this channel that I think he should start for England. I've been championing him since his under-17 days on this channel. I think he will soon be England's best player and could well become England's best player of my entire lifetime. So my views on him are pretty well known. From the conversations I've had with my mates on our group chat, or just the comments that I see from people on Twitter and pundits on TV, I think an awful lot of people are expecting him to be a starter for England at the Euros. Now, I would love for that to be the case, but I'm extremely dubious about it being so, for much the same reason that I don't think Jadon Sancho will start, and I personally would start him as well. I believe that Gareth Southgate has had his heart set on a front 3 of Marcus Rashford, Raheem Sterling and Harry Kane for some time now. At least for the last couple of years, and injuries aside, I think they are the front 3 that Southgate will play potentially in every game, and certainly during the knockout stages, should England progress of course. Now, of course Phil Foden can play in midfield, but regardless of what formation he has played, Gareth Southgate has shown a fondness for playing 2 holding midfielders and Mason Mount, and I don't see either of those selections changing, meaning the likes of Foden and Grealish are battling it out with Sterling, Rashford and Sancho for a starting berth on either of the 2 flanks. There is, I think, again, aside from injuries, only one possible exception to this being the case, and that would be if someone, most likely Phil Foden, had an absolutely awe-inspiring group stage, a la Rooney in 2004, and England blew the likes of Scotland, Czech Republic and Croatia away. In that instance, perhaps, external pressure would become so great and internal confidence would reach such an extent that Gareth Southgate would play him. Perhaps even along with a front 3, though I suspect that is even less likely. To give you more of a visual representation of the point that I'm trying to make, I think that this is the most attacking that England would conceivably ever line up at Euro 2020 under Gareth Southgate. What is far more likely is that we will see something like this in the group stages, similar to how England have lined up in recent World Cup qualifiers, followed by something like this as Southgate looks to take a more conservative approach in the knockout stages, should England progress. A lot will rest on England's opening game against Croatia, both in terms of how England's set up and how that game goes. If England play a back four and blow Croatia away, Southgate may well stick with it. If they play a back four and give away too many chances or struggle to keep hold of the ball, it will be a back three, possibly even against Scotland and the Czech Republic. Just for what it is worth, and to give you some insight into my contribution to my football group chat, this is the team that I would pick and the formation that I would play if I were the England boss. I think that's an England team to really get excited about. There are 4 exceptional attacking players, 2 really creative fullbacks, and enough solidity in the 2 holding players and centre-backs to give the rest of the team the freedom to express themselves. I would love to fit Mason Mount in somewhere, who will obviously start under Southgate and has been absolutely tremendous this season. But I think my 11 requires the steeliness of Henderson and Rice sitting in deep, and I think Foden is just better than Mount in that more advanced role. All of these 11s are somewhat assuming that Jordan Henderson is fully fit, but supposing that isn't the case, I think Gareth Southgate is most likely to start Calvin Phillips in his place. I should point out, in case it isn't clear, though it may already be, that I'm making this video before England's finalised 26-man squad has been announced, in the event that this video comes out after June 1st. I'm trying to make videos a couple of days ahead now that I've gone down to 5 videos a week, you see. I may be made to look very foolish very quickly, but barring any unknown injury or fitness concerns materialising between now and then, my suspicion is that the players left out of the squad from the provisional 33-man squad will be Ben Godfrey, Ben White, Bukayo Saka, Ollie Watkins, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Mason Greenwood, and either Sam Johnston or Aaron Ramsdale. I think it'll most likely be Ramsdale that misses out, and there's half a chance that Greenwood will sneak in ahead of either Jesse Lingard or James Ward-Prowse, and I suspect Trent Alexander-Arnold could be in there over Trippier or James, but my gut says that it will be those 7 or something very similar, and I don't see it making too much of an impact upon Gareth Southgate's actual starting 11. So that is the tactics and personnel talked about at length, but what about actual results? Because ultimately, Gareth Southgate could play a back 2, 3 or 8. He could drop Harry Kane, start Dwight Gale and call Mark Noble up to play in goal, and it wouldn't make a blind bit of difference to people if England were to win the tournament. You will know, those of you who subscribe and tune in on a regular basis, that I'm not one for predicting the outcome of games or competitions. I think it tends to make a fool out of people rather swiftly. No, I leave that type of thing to my esteemed colleague at HITC Sport, who tends to prove my point on a routine basis. I believe that I've only ever made 2 prediction videos, both around 3 years ago now, one of which was in relation to the 2018 World Cup. So maybe I will reserve my extremely rare prediction videos for major international competitions only, and make a Euros prediction video in the coming days. So I won't be going out on a limb and predicting England's exact path at Euro 2020 or anything like that, but what I will say is that England do now have a very good squad. Much improved, I believe, since 2018, and it is only natural that expectations have risen with that, especially for a tournament that could be played, and, well, will be played, largely on home soil. England's squad is the strongest in Group D, I don't think there can be too much debate about that, and they managed to avoid most of the big hitters in the group stage. Having said that, their opponents are all tricky customers. The Czech Republic and Scotland will both get men behind the ball, and that will present England with a real test, in terms of their powers of creativity, that were found wanting outside of set pieces in 2018. Czechia may lack a prolific goal scorer, but they carry plenty of threat from set pieces all of their own, not least in the form of West Ham star Thomas Souček. Scotland will be well drilled, just as they were in qualifying, and will likely play a back 3 all of their own, which will probably look more like a back 5 when they come up against England. Unless they get an early goal, England will have to be patient in both of those games, and try not to panic in front of an expectant home crowd. The Croatia game will be different, and there, the battle will be in midfield. In some respects, I think that game could favour England more than the other 2, if Croatia show ambition, which will open up gaps for the pace of England's forwards to get in behind and try to exploit. One thing I must point out, though I'm sure I won't be the first, is that if England top their group, they will face the runners-up in Group F, which is the so-called Group of Death, containing France, Portugal, Hungary, and Germany. I expect France to top that group, though it is impossible to know for sure, and I certainly wouldn't put money on it, meaning that a table-topping group stage for England would likely see them face either Germany or Portugal at Wembley Stadium, both of whom have proved to be unfavourable adversaries for the Three Lions at major tournaments in recent times. Conversely, if England were to finish as runners-up in Group D, they could potentially face more favourable opposition in the form of the Group E runners-up, which is a group containing Spain, Sweden, Poland, and Slovakia. Assuming, rather dangerously, that Spain were to top that group, that would likely give England a more preferable fixture than either Germany, Portugal, or France, but it would strip them of their home advantage since that round of 16 tie would then be played in Copenhagen rather than at Wembley. Obviously, the England team should just try to win games and forget about all these various permutations. But it's something for everyone else to think about. My big worry with England is that we don't go for it and end up going out without much of a bang against the first top-class team that we face. I think Gareth Southgate deserves to take England into these Euros, having reached the semi-finals of the 2018 World Cup, but his tactics are not my own. England have the talent to get at teams, not to be reckless or gung-ho, but to make other teams think and to be able to play their own game regardless of opposition. I don't think that is what Gareth Southgate will do, which means we will likely need our backline to be rock solid, no major errors from Jordan Pickford, and for Harry Kane to be in a rich vein of form. If there is one aspect of that plan that I don't doubt, it is Harry Kane, who I think is the perfect tournament player. Unmoved by the setting or size of the game, if England are to go far at the Euros, and by that I mean the semis or the final, I suspect it will be down, in no small part, to the England captain. So those are my views on what to expect from England at Euro 2020. I could well be wrong about absolutely everything. Maybe Dean Henderson will get the nod in goal, Trent will start at fullback, Foden will play in every game, and Jadon Sancho will be given licence to terrorise international defences in an orgy of free-flowing football. I have been wrong in the past, but there you have it. It's out there for what it's worth. Thank you for watching, as ever. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens for all of our Euro coverage this month, going into next, and, well, just for all the other videos, I suppose. You can also find me on social media, on Twitter or Instagram, by the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.